Hey, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with a kind of a nice little video here I've been wanting to do for a while. I've got a flute someone has sent me. It's not unusual for someone to send me a flute for me to do a repair job on or make it play, as I hear so many times. I've actually got 2 or 3 on the way that people have contacted me about, and that's not an open invitation, please. I want you to learn how to do your own work here to make this happen, but unfortunately sometimes people get stuck in a rut and there's nothing else we can do other than this. Anyway, as I said, I'm with Blue Bear Flutes, bluebearflutes.com. We have tons of videos on making and playing Native American flutes, and even some other Native American points of view that you might find an interest in. I don't know. You can find our website, which is bluebearflutes.com. You can find us on Instagram, which we have a huge presence there under Blue Bear Flutes, of course. Also our Facebook and other social media. But what I'm doing today is I'm going to be making this flute play, which has some major issues that the maker had mentioned, some just huge challenges that he was having a difficult time with. His name is Matthias. He was actually in the Native American Flutes Reddit, and if you guys haven't been there, I'd suggest checking it out. There's some real good discussions that go on there. I like to think that most of us keep them pretty friendly. I've heard some really wonderful friendly things by a great number of people there. Reddit has a bad reputation, but this is a place where we can kind of go and chat about things. And if I have anything to say about it, I try to make sure everything's on the up and up. Anyway, this flute I'm going to try to play. There are 6 fingerings, and it's got a hole right there with a bead in it. I presume is where he had made some mistake, or maybe just decided to put a bead in. I didn't ask. So it's got some challenges here. Number one, the sound hole is a massive problem. It's too small of a sound hole for this size of a diameter. And the reason I tried to point it over towards the camera a little bit is hoping that some of the audio would come out, because the sound of this fire and one of my fans that I've got going may overpower the sound of this flute. What I'm going to do with this flute is I'm going to take the block off, which feels like it's glued down. I'm going to retune the fingerings in a way that it will play, and hopefully if I have to go and fill in some fingerings, which I feel like I really am, I will make it not look bad in the process, because he's made something beautiful, I think. Something that looks just really amazing. He's got some wraps here and some little decoration, little wood burnings around this hole, and this little design here, which is like a Indian design from India. And I'm hoping that this flute was supposed to be a Native American type flute. It was on a Native American Reddit. Knows who I am, so I guess maybe he's in the right place. But the thing I wanted to do with this flute specifically is mention one word. It's a word that I'm going to go in great detail about in future videos. With this video, just a little bit. But it's tradition. And a lot of times people ask me, what is tradition? And when I answer them, if they're asking about tradition of a specific group of people, say Cherokee Indians, for example, I always like to ask what time period and where from. Because if we're talking about the late 1800s in Oklahoma, that's one group of people. But if we're talking about the late 1800s in Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, Alabama, Georgia, or any dozen number of other places, California, Texas, Mexico, Ohio, I know I'm missing one, probably Illinois, Missouri. Thanks guys in Missouri, appreciate y'all so much. But if we're talking about that, we need to focus on who it is we're talking about, because we may, number one, offend some people, and number two, may misrepresent something. So that's important. With the Native American flute, the Native American flute, I have said it many times. I've got another video coming out talking about this. I'm going to mention it here. Native American flutes were made by most indigenous peoples, and almost everybody made numerous different types, and a lot of those types were the same as other groups of people. It's because we used to share a lot of ideas. One group that lives over here may have made a flute that was just like the people over there, and vice versa. And for that reason, I can't say in my 37 years of experience that this flute is a Eastern Woodlands flute type or a Plains Indian style flute. I can't say that. It just doesn't sit with somebody of knowledge. So what I'm going to do first here is take this block off, and it's unfortunate that I have to do that because I'm going to have to cut the string in order to do it. which looks really great on there, but I can't fix it without doing this. And then I'm going to have to hopefully easily remove the block without too much trouble. It came right off. Oh no, that's the bead. The bead came right off. So the block is glued down. Always a bad idea to glue blocks down. I figured that out early on. Even after countless people asked me to glue it down because they couldn't figure out where it went. It was a bad idea because this might happen. You might need to go back and fix something. Maybe something got stuck in there. I don't know. Could be a number of things that would happen. So the problem, as I had imagined, the bottom of the block is flat, which is fine. We've got a video on that. It's like what track is best for a Native American flute. The problem, as I had imagined, is the track is kind of like non-existent. It's so minute that there's not enough airflow to make this happen. Another minor problem is there is a plug glued in here. It's not made at the node like I do on my river cane or bamboo flutes. There's a plug glued in here. And when I looked in the flute, I thought I seen some airspace leaks. It's hard to tell, but I can kind of see where the plug was shaped by hand, I believe. Even if it wasn't shaped by hand, it's so hard to match the shape and size of this. You can do it, but it's just really difficult. I'm going to have to go in and reseal that, and I'm going to have to start with the track. Now, I've got another video coming out soon about a lot of question that people have asked me for a long time is I've made my flute, I've made the bass note of the flute, I've made it play, now where do I put the fingerings? Well, we're going to make a video about that. Y'all been asking for that forever. The reason I haven't answered it is because it's a terrible question. I'm just kidding. It's a good question, but the way that you came by that question is a problem. And that also goes along with tradition. And that's where we're going to talk a little bit more in depth. So what I just did was I squared that hole up and made it a little bit wider, a whole lot cleaner. You don't have to use a burning tool to do this. I'm doing this to try to be quick. What I just now did, and I could be mistaken, that could be a node that is in the flute, but it's not a node that belongs there. It's been put there. So that might be an issue, but I've got to seal it up good anyway. Anyway, what I just did was I also flattened and reshaped and especially redefined the edge inside of the track. That edge there is so critical. Not just this edge and not this edge, but the edges of the track are so unbelievably critical. It needs to be smooth and clean and nice and straight. And so doing that usually would make something like this play immediately. I need to sand this block down just a smidge. I'm going to do it by hand here so I can stay in the same place. Just sandpaper back and forth. That's good. Okay. Now, one other thing too, the edge of this block is like laser straight and squared. I'll change that just a little bit. What I did was, on a very micro level, I don't know if you'll even be able to see that, is I beveled the edge. In other words, I made it go instead of straight and square. This actually helps the air come out a little bit better. Let's see if it plays. It's a lot louder. Still seems like there is an air leak though, so I'm going to see what happens when I fill it up with some super glue. Turning it around so that the super glue can seal up all the cracks in there, which is like super important. Because like I say, the plug that's in it is not the original node of the bamboo. There we go. So, did that. I can see that it really did the number on there. I'm also going to go ahead and fill it in. The reason I'm doing this, filling in that node area just a little bit, is because it's concave in there. And concave's okay, but it's not as good as flat. That's not something I could have shown you well without using my snake camera. And I don't want to have to dig that thing out for this tiny little purpose. I'll just take my word for it that it was very concave in there. And I just filled it in with some sawdust, which not only will help seal any air leaks that it had, it will also make that plug flat inside instead of concave. Concave, like dished out, that's not helpful in this particular case. Matthias did a great job here. I'm not complaining. Like anybody that just makes their first flute, you know, you need some guidance. I wish I could have been there helping at the moment, but I stay pretty dang busy. Let's see what happens. I think that'll hold. Let's see what happens when I play the bottom note now. Jeez, those fumes. Never breathe in super glue fumes. Still a little bit of a problem. And that is partly because, there again, the size of the sound hole, which I'm not going to make it too wide. I want to keep it close to his original design as I possibly can. It's partly that. And partly the length of the flute in relationship to its diameter. And here's a G that I just finished for somebody. The G here has a mouthpiece that's about 7 to 8 inches long. Not all Gs have mouthpieces like that. This one does. The thing that's important is the length from this sound hole to the bottom of the flute and how big around the diameter it is. Let's see what that is in comparison to this guy. So we got 2 inches, maybe 2.5 more from what this G has, which would, if there were the same diameter, which they're not, the G is bigger in diameter and the other flute is smaller in diameter. If they were the same diameter, then that would make this almost an E or an F sharp, something like that, if it was 2 inches longer. An F sharp is about 1.5 inches or inch longer, and then the E is about 2 to 2.5 inches longer than this G, from where the sound hole lines up to the bottom of the flute. And so, say, tradition is following the way that somebody else does something. You know, following your way of doing something. If you don't have a way of doing something, you have to follow somebody else's tradition. And in the case of this flute, one thing is that it wasn't following a stable form of Native American flute design. So, having said that, Matthias could have used an online calculator to decide where the fingerings need to go. And that online calculator will let you make a flute that is 1/4 inch in diameter and 6 feet long and call it a G. Will it play? Absolutely not. Or you could also make a flute that is 6 inches in diameter on the inside and only, say, 7 or 8 inches long, and that would be a G. Will it play? It might make a note, probably not a good sounding note, but it won't perform, not at all. Because the calculator is basing size and vibrations on your material, and that's going to be that other video we talked about. This flute, though, it doesn't follow any of the patterns that I personally use, and I've got some knowledge of other people's patterns as well. It's kind of random. It's not a terrible thing that somebody experiments and does their own thing. That's not bad, but it's just not one that we know for a fact will work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off about 1 inch of this and come back and see if it'll make a better sound. And you want to stay here and watch my fires for a second? Okay, I kind of played it for a second while I was there at the bandsaw to see what it would sound like. Now it actually looks a little bit more like something I'm familiar with. I can tell by the placement of these fingerings and the length of the bottom of the flute the distance from this to that fingering, although this is kind of out a little bit, this is actually where an F sharp fingering should be. It might play a little bit better, and I tuned on it for a moment so I could see if it would make a better sound, and it was a little bit louder and a little bit clearer. There again, making something that is following a established pattern. Sounds better. Still a little bit iffy. Let's see if I can clear that up. That's probably the last of the burning tool that I'm going to use. In the old days, I would use a flattening rod to make that flat. I'm just going to kind of hand sand it a little bit here just for a second. Usually hand sanding is a terrible idea because most people make it all kinds of wavy or whatever. It's an option, but not the best option. Let's see. There again, one problem we're dealing with, even though I've made the sound hole larger, is that the size of the sound hole does not support the diameter or length of the flute. And I'm going to burn this hole out just to see what happens. That's a clearer sound. Well, let's check this with my F sharp pattern, which is really close to. Top two fingerings match with the F sharp. Where this beat is matches another one. In between here matches one, and in between there matches one. But the top two fingerings are really close. This is about an F sharp range right now with the size sound hole that it has. Now, something I will tell you too that y'all don't, probably not everybody watching this video might know, is that the size of the sound hole also changes the tone of the flute. So if we made it wider, it's going to be a higher tone flute. It's like an F sharp is what it is. So let's see what I can do here with this hole. I hope I'm not destroying his flute, because the fingerings, like I say, are kind of in some places that I wouldn't put them. I'm going to go ahead and do the next hole there too. Something I'm not telling y'all, I probably ought to mention, is I have made so many flutes that I know I've got some wiggle room here. Even though the fingerings aren't in the exact same place they usually are with my pattern. Mind you, the inside diameter is way off for that pattern. This is about 3/4, which is better for like a or a high B. Not good for, I mean, it worked for a G because I'm about to make a 6-hole G, but it's a traditional old school one. That, anyway, the diameter is not good for an F sharp or anything else, in my opinion. It'll still play. So let's see what we can do here. We'll go ahead and make this next hole. I feel confident that he had put these 3 fingerings here in the hopes of making a modern 6-hole flute where you keep this finger covered up all the time. Y'all haven't seen my videos about that, please watch them. I mean, just think about it for a minute. That's all I ask. Let's see what happens. I try not to talk too much in all my videos these days too, because if I told you everything that was on my mind, number one, you'd know exactly what I'm doing. And as good as that might sound, it confuses some people. And so in the old days when I'd make videos and talk about stuff, people would say I was going on and it was prattle and whatever. And I've had more people tell me they love hearing me talk than people that hate it. But this one's made just in case those of you watching it are some of those people that hate hearing me talk. I'm not telling you why a lot of this happens, because I figured y'all figured it out. It's not making a really great sound, but it is in tune. Not really happy with that sound hole. I know it's got a leak in there. course, the inside of it looks much better now after that filler. You notice I've got two different size or colors of, not size, but two different colors of super glue. And they are varying consistency. One's like super mega uber thin, and the other one's like regular. The mega uber thin one will find its way through anything. Some pretty cool stuff. Letting it seal up a few other things here. Let's make this hole just a little bit bigger. Too much glue. Oh, that's better. Putting the super glue over the fire causes a chain reaction to take place where it starts to like seal itself. Let's try this hole. That's really close to an F sharp there. Might fill that in, or let him make him a modern 6-hole flute where you have a hole there and then you never use it. Except for those of you right now who are correcting me and saying you use that flute for this, that, and the other, and it makes X, Y, and Z so much easier. Number one, those ain't native ideas. Number two, I can do all that on a 5-hole or 4-hole flute. It's just a little bit off. Say they're in an obscure location here, so I'm going to make it just a pinch higher in tone. I'm going to shift all of the notes a little sharp. I'm not looking at the tuner. I probably ought to, but shift these notes a little bit so that it's more in tune with itself. And I think I'm going to fill that hole in. I really hate to leave it there because it's like insane. For those of you that play the 6-hole flute, some kind of, it does something to your brain. It's just like it messes up something. It makes you believe in false ideas or something. Almost done here. So that was just a little bit too small still. And it's because they were in the wrong place. Like I say, if the fingering had been placed a little north, closer to where this bead is, or stone, it would have produced better sound closer to what it should be. Once again, not looking at the tuner right now. So I'm still going to work on shifting these notes a little bit north, which is going to turn it into probably a sharp F sharp or a flat G. Which that's not a G flat or an F sharp because of course those are the same thing, but a flat version of a G440, which is going to be like a G4, 38, 36, which doesn't really matter. I'm doing this by ear instead to make it sound good, and that's what's important in this case. Otherwise, like I said, Matthias did a great job of making a really neat looking instrument. I would always recommend any embellishments you're going to do to your instrument, which historically didn't really happen, one or two maybe random occasions, but usually not. But any embellishments that you're going to do, I would recommend saving those until after you finish your flute, made it play perfectly exactly how you want it. You've made 100 flutes or 20 flutes or 5 flutes, or even if you've only made that one, but it turned out exactly what you wanted. Then if you're willing to take a chance that your word learning skills aren't as good as this guy's, he did a really good job. But if you're willing to take that chance, go for it. There again, historically, not something people did. I don't try to promote that type of thing. I do burn my bear on the back of it. After years of people asking me to sign my flutes, that's my signature. I do that instead, and I don't like putting laser etched wood burning embellishments on my flutes. If you do, go for it, no problem. But like for me, I like to keep them closer to the original stuff. I think this is going to be a good one. As soon as I get done with it, I'm going to oil the inside of it and tie the block back on in a way that he can use it and send it back to him and see what he thinks. I hope he likes it as much as I know I've liked how it's turning out. I'm just going to finish doing these holes. But you see where I'm going with this. Tradition is really important. If you don't know tradition, you can find out what it is. And if you don't know where to find out what it is, ask somebody. Hopefully they'll tell you the right thing. There's so much information out there that everybody's sharing that is completely way off. Got more videos about that to come to. Anyway, I hope this video has helped you out a little bit, kind of showing you where you can go with something, what kind of problems some people have and difficulties in making a flute, and what it takes to make it right. There again, pretty much done with it now. I'm just going to sharpen these holes a little bit with a bigger burning tool. It will take 5-10 more minutes to heat up. So I hope y'all are doing well. Thank you for watching. Please check out my hundreds of other videos on making and playing Native American flutes. If you need a course on how to play them, I have that for free here on YouTube. Been playing for a while and have recorded multiple albums and written some books and did all kinds of crazy stuff. Charlie Mato-Toyela for Blue Bear Flutes and BlueBearFlutes.com signing out. Y'all take care. I hope to hear you and see you again very soon. Leave me some messages in the comments. I need that sometimes. Y'all take care.